Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Gives in the Bank Recruiting Podcast brought to you by BuckeyeScoop.com. I am Mark Givler, joined as always by Bill Green. This is another special commitment edition. We're going to go through the latest Ohio State commitment. It is top 100 defensive end Omari Abor, Duncanville, Texas. Longtime Ohio State target. Texas A&M was in there, Alabama was in there, Oklahoma for a while, Texas, I think LSU, Clemson, I think tried to make a late run. A lot of schools, picks Ohio State. Bill, first of all, are you surprised by this? I know we've talked about him a lot, even a hot topic of discussion. It's been maybe a little bit of a roller coaster, but what are your thoughts on this, and how surprised are you by this decision?
Yeah, not very surprised at all. I felt all along that Ohio State was in a great spot for this kid. Even when we saw other schools mentioned, it was always Ohio State and Texas A&M, and it was Texas and Ohio State, LSU and Ohio State. There's never been a time that Ohio State hasn't been in this, but there have been a lot of other schools, Oklahoma, Tech, whoever. They were in one day, they were out the next. Ohio State's been there the whole time. I think Alabama kind of cooled on him, and then that really fanned the flames, and it made me think Ohio State was going to get him. So, no, I've kind of had him in the projected class, for a while, lurking right there. And this is a big get for them. I mean, they wanted him. They've never wavered on him. They chased a lot of guys on the D line this year, and they've never ever wavered on this kid. I think they've really liked him as a player, as a person, and I think it's a big get for Larry Johnson.
Yeah, I think consistency won out here for Ohio State. Just them being consistent with Omari, them sticking in there. I thought they were heading for a summer commitment from him coming out of the visit. Actually, obviously it never materialized, and at that point, you start to kind of question, wow, is this going to happen for Ohio State or not? But they really, again, to their credit, when Oklahoma was a hot school, they stood in there and kept at it. When Alabama was the hot school, they stood in there. And so this kind of persistence paid off here. I think they got a little bit of an assist from the Alabamas and Texas A&Ms of the world, just because I think, especially with Texas A&M, I mean, that school's in on 20 freaking kids on the defensive line there at one point, and they only can only take so many. And I think Ohio State maybe zeroing in on a smaller group as they were recruiting Omari down the stretch in the fall, I think probably helped them versus a school like Texas A&M, who was trying to appease maybe a dozen different targets. So I think that helped. Obviously, I think the relationship with Larry Johnson was huge here. You can only get so comfortable with buildings and atmospheres and things like that. Eventually, you gotta have a connection with your coach. So I think that helped in a big way. How do you view Omari? This is to me someone who could maybe fill a few different roles. Is he definitely an edge guy? And now, we got the Jim Knowles factor. Is he? So now we're not just talking about, is he an edge guy? We're talking about, okay, does he put his hand in the dirt or is he a stand-up guy? Where do you see him fitting in?
Yeah, a year ago, I would have said this guy was headed to be a defensive tackle. He just looked like somebody that was going to get much bigger. But then you watch his film recently, and he's slimmer. And he looks a little taller and a little longer and a little more athletic and a little more quicker. And I think he's a DN now. I mean, I think he could play inside, maybe. I mean, I kind of look at him the way I looked at Tyreek Smith at one point, when I saw Tyreek a lot in high school. So I think Omari in the Knowles system, I think he's a DN. I think he's a strong side guy. We'll see if he could be a stand-up guy, but he's just so versatile and so valuable. I mean, I like him more today than I would have when we talked about these guys last year when they were juniors. I was not as high on Omari as I would be today. I think he got a lot better as a senior, and we'll see where his body takes him. There was a school of thought that Tyreek would play inside too, and I was part of that talk. I thought he would blow up and be 300 pounds. He never did. So we'll see. Omari Abor, you take him. You see where his body leads him, and you play him accordingly. But I think he's very versatile, and I like him. I think he's a great get for them. I like him a lot more today than I would have a year ago.
Yeah, I think Tyreek's a good comparison just because I think you're right. I think he got a little leaner and a little thinner, a little more explosive um, senior year versus junior year, which I'm always a little bit surprised when that happens because usually these guys don't get leaner. These big guys, they get bigger. So that was interesting to me. One thing I think was interesting too is there was a lot of talk about him, you know, not having this, great early senior year, whatever. People were kind of, I don't say dogging him, but there were some people that I think were having some questions about him. He was fighting through some injuries at the time, but holy cow, did he turn it on in the playoffs? He had an unbelievable playoff run. That strip sack in the semifinal where he stripped it up, scooped it, and scored. Just impact plays. I mean, every weekend during the high school playoffs down in Texas, I've been seeing just him causing havoc basically, and so I think a lot of that early season stuff that people were having issue with, it was either sour grapes or it was injury because I know he was dealing with some stuff, and so I didn't see that at all. Kind of down the stretch, I thought he had a really good finish to his high school career. Um, I'm probably in the boat that he puts a hand in the dirt but plays on the edge. I think he's probably that strong side, and I'm not sure if he's a stand-up guy. I'll tell you this though, I did have a guy from Texas that's kind of seen him and seen Iniah White, and he thinks they're similar. I was a little surprised by that. I've always viewed Iniah White as more of like a Josh Sweat type of build.
Right.
And I kind of said this, and they thought Omari has kind of morphed into more of that type of player as well. I'm not saying that's necessarily where I'm going with this, but I'm just saying there are people who have watched him in Texas who think he could even be the stand-up guy for Jim Knowles' defense. So that's something I guess to watch here. But it was interesting to me. Did you down the stretch? Was it Alabama? Was it A&M? And would Oklahoma get back in it? Because Oklahoma was essentially out, but then they had the coaching change, and so they were able to kind of get back in. So one of my biggest takeaways from this is just how many schools Ohio State was able to fend off at various points. I'm not saying like Alabama, was there the whole way, but they were for a long stretch. Alabama was the school and or the competition. So it was impressive to me how they were able to hold some of these teams off. Okay, so another top 100 Texas guy coming to Ohio State. Let's dive into that for a second. I think this is probably a good time as any to kind of talk about the Texas stuff. They have a new coach now, or year two of Sark here coming up. Ohio State's been able to pluck a lot of guys out of Texas. Does this continue moving forward? How important do you think it is to get someone like Omari Abor in order to continue the Texas stuff?
No, I think it's huge. And it just, these guys keep coming to Ohio State. And aside from a certain quarterback, they all seem to do really well. So I think it's going to continue, especially when you add in the fact that, boy, that was a rough first year for Steve Sarkisian. And it's not so much the one-loss record, because I don't think people expected them to be in a playoff team, but I don't think anybody expected what they saw this year. There was a lot of dysfunction there, and it wasn't pretty at all. You can have a season where you're 5-5 or 4-6, whatever you are, but you can see the promise on the field. You can see kids are battling, they're playing their tails off. They're losing games by a field goal in the end, but they're right there every week. Well, we didn't see a lot of that this year. There were a lot of blowout losses. You had kids taping coaches, talking to the team. There was just a lot of dysfunction in Texas. It didn't look good for Sark, and it certainly doesn't look good when you're trying to turn around this situation and keep these top kids from leaving the state. It looked a lot Tom Herman-ish to me at Texas. I have not seen a change yet. They always talk about changing the culture. That culture looks the same to me, and that's why these kids are fleeing the state.
Yeah, it's almost become a thing where, when they started on this Texas run like 5 years ago, I don't think we talked about Texas A&M that much. It was always, oh, you got to beat Texas for these guys.
Right.
Now it's you got to be worried about Texas A&M. I think that's the hot school in the state right now, and it's interesting because Dallas Fort Worth area, that's several hours away from Texas A&M. It's not those aren't based in Dallas Fort Worth. I think so. Dallas Fort Worth's got a little bit of Atlanta to it in that it's a melting pot city. There's a lot of transplants and there's a lot of mixed loyalties. And so I think as long as Ohio State can keep their footprint there and get a kid every year like an Omari Abor, there's no reason for me to think that they're going to start getting shut out of Texas. So I think the pipeline will continue, one or two big time kids a year. And, we'll see if that continues in 2023. All right. Well, I think we've went long enough on this one. I appreciate everyone watching. Appreciate everyone listening. Another huge commitment for Ohio State. Check out all our stuff on BuckeyeScoop.com for more on this commitment and on recruiting and everything else we have going on. So go ahead and check us out again. It's BuckeyeScoop.com, or you can catch us on YouTube, youtube.com/BuckeyeScoop. Thank you for listening, watching, and we will see you next time.